The build show today, gas line plumbing. I've got a master plumber with me. You know I nerd about plumbing. There's 3 ways that you can plumb for gas. We're gonna talk about them, pros and cons, and which one you might want for your next remodel or new build. Let's get going. All right, Eric, Aune, there's 3 ways to plumb for gas lines. And I see on production builders a lot of these yellow lines. I'm assuming this is the least cost way to run gas for a house.
It might be the fastest. I don't know if it's exactly the lowest cost.
Okay.
So this is called CSST, and that stands for corrugated stainless steel tubing.
And I can see that stainless right here, and it's got a jacket on it. And it looks to me like it's pretty flexible. Like you could run this pretty quickly, almost like you're running Romex, right?
Yeah, so we're buying this on big wood spools, right? Maybe 200, 300, 400 feet at a time. And we're able to pull that maybe overhead or through walls, through the trusses pretty easily.
Got it.
That's where you're probably saving the cost is on the labor alone.
But the material, if it's stainless, it's probably not all that inexpensive, right?
It's not, it's an engineered product. In fact, this is a little bit older. There's some newer stuff with some grounding, bonding built into the shielding, all kinds of stuff that makes it cost more.
Interesting.
You're probably thinking about $3 to $4 per foot wholesale on the cost of this. This is 1/2 inch, so of course you might need larger lines depending on what you're running.
Yeah, that's legit. $3 to $5 maybe for materials. That's not inexpensive.
Right, plus you have fittings as well, so that doesn't include the fittings. These are special proprietary fittings to the manufacturer, so you're not going to cross over from one type because there's many types, of course. You got to have their fitting. These aren't cheap either. That's a brass fitting, solid brass, going to cost a little bit of money.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're going to come back to this in a minute because I want to hear some pros and cons on that. But next up, what I've seen in houses for generations, really, not just decades, is black iron. You've got some threads, you've got some fittings on there, and the plumber has a threading machine and a cutter, this pretty good sized machine in the driveway, a lot of oil involved for threading these, a lot of labor. What do you say about these?
Well, black iron, obviously it's durable, right? Not flexible at all.
Yep.
It's gonna take a lot more time to put together. Like you said, the cutting, the threading, you've got specialized tools. Hell, you have hand threaders.
Oh, okay.
Not just power threaders.
Gotcha.
And can you imagine putting threads on the end of that pipe?
By hand.
By hand.
Oh, dang.
That's why you get beefy like me.
Popeye.
Right? It's not the pizza or burgers.
That's how you get beefy like me.
It's running ratchet threaders in the joist. No, really, manual, very manual, right? So you've got a pipe wrench or 2. You've got your machines, your oils, your cutting, your thread tape, your pipe dope. All together, very labor intensive. Reliable, absolutely reliable.
Yeah, and pretty durable. Like if you were remodeling, for instance, I'd be worried that if somebody like me is using a Sawzall through some drywall to take out a wall, all of a sudden they hit a gas line and you hear that horrible noise.
Yeah.
That would be bad. Whereas,
hopefully that's all that happens.
now you can cut through this with a Sawzall, but if you just nicked it, it ain't cutting.
Yeah, you're never gonna damage it in that case. Well, I mean, I guess you shouldn't say
Not never, but not as easily.
Not likely.
Now, what's new in the black iron world?
Well, in iron pipe, galvanized or black, because some part of the countries are using galvanized for gas as well. We're pressing it like our copper fittings.
Ah, yeah. So we've talked about these a lot in the past.
Yep.
There's a specific jaw that goes on your tool. It fits on here, and you can press your copper onto copper. But they have that for gas now too, huh?
Absolutely. So this is a trade brand name mega press. It's made by, this one's Viga. A couple companies out there making it.
There's some other manufacturers of this as well.
Correct, exactly. And so this different jaw than the copper is made for this fitting, and it's gonna actually be able to press directly onto the iron pipe. You wanna try it?
Yeah, can we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's
So-
all set up.
So I did want to note that you handed me a piece of pipe that doesn't have threads on it. I'm assuming we don't want to press a threaded pipe. Is that right?
Yeah, great point. Great point. So if you've got a threaded end on a pipe, we're going to cut that off because we're just pressing on the bald. But there's some prep involved. We're not going to do a tutorial on that today.
Yeah, you're not.
But just to show really ultimately how this goes together. Notice you're not using any pipe wrenches, no thread sealant. You don't have any flames. You don't have compression couplings.
And get your hands out of the way too, right?
Yep.
Just that simple.
That's
Check
it.
that out.
So that's a solid connection, permanent. You'd have to cut it out to remove it. A disadvantage when you compare it to threading, right?
That's a good point. So once I make that connection, I'm not getting a wrench out and changing it. I'm gonna have to get a Sawzall out and cut that off, aren't I?
Right. So more deliberate. You know, you're being cognizant all the time, trying to be efficient with your time and the materials, because the cost of all of this isn't inexpensive. So if you do it right the first time, you're not likely ever to have to take it apart.
Makes sense. Now on this copper press, which is intended for water or maybe glycol, I noticed there's a black gasket in there, and this gasket is yellow.
Yep.
What's the deal there?
So they're made out of two different materials, and the manufacturer chose to use yellow because it's that universal color for gas. And so you could pick up a fitting, look in it real quick, it's yellow, I know it's for gas. Viga actually also puts a yellow dot on the outside of the fitting, just so you can visually inspect it quickly to make sure the right fitting is grabbed or installed if it's already in place.
Gotcha.
So that type of sealing element is a different material. It's not made for water. That material in the water fitting is not made for gas.
Yeah, that makes sense. In your mind, between, let's say, this mega press fitting and these standard old school fittings, is there any longevity difference between these two?
Well, we know these have lasted literally 100 years. These have an amazing manufacturer's warranty, like decades long, and we suspect that they're going to last quite a while. We've been using them on gas for about 10 years now. We've been using them for water systems, like heating systems, stuff with glycol in it, oil, all kinds of different process piping. They've been using the Mega Press style fitting for, over 10 years. So we're not exactly sure. I think it's going to last quite a while. I have confidence in the manufacturer, and so I think that's a permanent fitting we're not going to have to worry about.
Makes a lot of sense. Any other downsides of the flexible stainless besides that, I could nick it on the job site, or it could have some amount of more prone to damage?
Well, so you could damage just putting it in, right? So it can be kinked. It's a little, you got to work hard for it. It could be crushed if it were struck with a hammer, okay? You're not going to see that with an iron pipe.
Yeah.
Right?
Really durable.
It is obviously easier to work with. It's flexible. One person could run a long line versus having to have a couple people with heavier, less flexible materials. It comes to lightning strikes, things like that. So your gas systems need to be bonded to the electrical system, which is bonded to the ground, right? And so this is more prone to problems in the event that the house were struck by lightning.
Makes sense. I do wonder about what happens to a system that's fairly new in the future if we remodel too. Like if I'm building houses truly that would last for my grandchildren to come remodel it, if this is behind the walls, they're gonna know what to do. There's still gonna be fittings around, we could mega press it. I don't know for sure, I don't have any affiliation with these manufacturers, but I wonder if they find this in 50 years, if they're gonna know how to correct it, fix it, have the tools to mess with it.
I worry a little bit more about the fittings being proprietary. So if I was working on a house that had this installed 20 years ago, and I have to look for the markings and find that manufacturer, luckily the manufacturers have been around for the last 20 years, are still around, but 50 years from now, I'm not sure.
Who knows?
Right? So you'd have to find the right fittings. If it's threaded, they're not going away. I suspect that this stuff is going to be around a long time.
Yeah.
Okay. But even so, it's iron pipe. So I could cut a fitting out and thread it. That's fine. If that's what we end up with, 50 years from now, back to threading for some reason, we can do that. Of course, specialized tools with press, very expensive. You're not going to run down to Home Depot and buy one of these if you're a homeowner. I mean, you could.
Yeah,
but
pretty unlikely though.
Yeah, unlikely, because a combination of like the jaw set for the iron pipe, the press tool itself, you're in the thousands of dollars.
Yeah, these jaws are real expensive.
They are.
But for a plumber like you that charges a good hourly rate, really smart to have a fitting that speeds up your time big time, worth it to spend extra on fittings and have way less labor involved.
Yeah, so comparing all together, we're saving on labor, paying a little more for materials. However, I can put away or trade my pipe wrench for my press tool and run iron pipe really fast because I can press it.
That's really good. Hopefully you guys learned something. I know I did. This is a lot of new stuff for me, and really interesting to see these out in the field as I've been hanging out with Eric the last day or two. By the way, stay tuned for a video series that we got coming out together called Talking Trades, where Eric and I are talking about the career possibilities, the opportunities out there for young people to consider a career in the trades. Eric's built an incredible life for himself on that foundation of the plumbing trade, and I really appreciate your time today, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go follow Eric on his YouTube channel, check out his podcast, and of course follow him here on @Mechanical Hub on Instagram, and you can see his videos on thebuildshow.com. With that being said, follow us on Instagram or TikTok. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.